Hey guys, this is Glorious Fruit, here to talk about the first episode of The Last of Us, which is an adaptation from the game. And so, for starters, for anyone watching right now who have not seen the show yet, I full warning, this is all spoilers. And for those of us who've played the game, we should probably consider it like an alternate universe of The Last of Us, since we already been told it's an adaptation from the game. All right, so let's start. What's the difference between the game and the show? For starters, in the show, you get this intro of two professors or scientists talking about infectious diseases between viruses and and so on. And so and at the end, the professor talks about the fungus, where it talks about a specific fungus that takes over the host and puppeteers them to do whatever they're doing. And so I think that was a great beginning, because for the people who have not played the game, probably wouldn't know what's going on, or like how the origin of the story. It's like a foreshadowing of what's to happen. And going further, even though it's kind of minor, there's the difference between Sarah, and both Sarahs in the game and the show. In the show, Sarah has a little more screen time compared to in the game, so you get to know a little more about Sarah, which is, I mean, it's not like a whole lot, but like in the beginning, she cooks a breakfast for Joel, and because it's his birthday, she ends up stealing money, and and where the game, you don't really know what she does or doesn't, because in the game she gives Joel a new watch to replace the one he was wearing. And so, like, after school in the show, she goes over to a shop that fixes watch and sells many clocks and watches. And so there was this part of the scene where the lady closes everything, closes the shop, told Sarah to, get out of here. And, I think she left with her watch fixed without even, being paying. But, maybe I missed that part where she paid for the watch to be fixed. And so on. And it continues on. She goes visit a neighbor of theirs, which is, I forgot to mention that before she even goes to school, the neighbors talk to Joel and about one for them to come over. They have made biscuits, and you see this son-in-law feeding biscuits to this old lady who has zero reactions to anything. She's just there, like she's like, is she even alive, dead, in a coma or something? You just see like biscuits being shoved in her mouth. And so in this part, she came from the hospital, and so it's like, what's going on with this old lady? Because it's like they focus her a little bit, and it's like supposed to be like a foreshadowing. And going fast forward, she goes visit them. They like bake cookies or something like that. And they didn't really show that, because I think she went over to hang out over there with them and bake some kind of cookies or something like that. And so when Sarah asked permission to borrow a movie that they own, there was a reflection where the old lady was going totally wicked, and then when she turned over, she was like a normal old lady. And that was like major foreshadowing, where the old lady was already infected. And so there was one take of it where I think I see some posts where the flower supposed to be where the infection started, because it seemed like, I mean, like, yeah, we could take that maybe the hospital, it has to do with something what happened in the hospital, because the old lady was taken in the hospital, so she was in the city. But then it seems like the people also want to, or the show maybe, or those of us who should take it as the flower was part of the beginning of the virus. And so, because you use flour to bake cookies and make biscuits and whatnot, so that's maybe like the type of fungus that was there, and it just was not good at all. But let's talk about the difference between the origin, because in the origin of the infection in the game, it started off in South America where crops gone bad. In the show, it seemed like it started somewhere in Jakarta in Indonesia. That's where like Sarah mentioned about it. I think when they were running away or something like that. Also, another difference between how when all the chaos starts happening, Joel walks in the house frantic, and he was just in the city or something like that, and he just killed one of his neighbors, and that happened in the game. In the show, Sarah went outside because the dog was barking in panic. She goes in her neighbor's house and witnessed the old lady murdering her son-in-law and daughter-in-law, and she runs outside and Joel murders the old lady. And then you also witness different neighbors trying to help the old lady, and you just see them being bitten off by the couples that were already bitten by the old lady. And so this is the next part where the scenery is different compared from the game. In the show, in the show you pass by a hospital, and I mean, not the show, the game, you pass by a hospital. In the show you don't. And so, for obvious reasons, you can't really mimic everything from what you've seen from the game and try to put it exactly in the show. The cool part is that one of their friends, I forgot their name, I think it was Johnny or something like that. I probably got it all wrong, but you see their house in flames and they're in their farm. Another next part is you go and fast forward where you don't really see how bad Boston is in the beginning before you see Joel. And also the time difference. It started in the show, it started 2003, and then you jump to 2023. In the game, I believe it was 2013, and then you jump up to 2000. I think it was like 2023. At least I believe. I need to play the game again, but it was a lot further just because in the game there were smartphones, there was PlayStation 3, but I think it was just having PlayStation 3 was more of an Easter egg kind of thing. But the smartphones, and over in the show, we got Nokia bricks that still exist. So like there was no like smartphones and stuff like that, like advanced technology that existed just yet. And for obvious reasons, they won't exist. And you see this kid who was already infected, and there's no mercy, and they immediately kill anyone who's infected, and that was in the show. You see Joel and Tess burning off bodies. In the game, you don't really see what they do to survive. You only know that they do illegal stuff like trade in goods and guns, which is what I'll get to in a moment, where to survive from ration cards. In the show, you see Joel dealing drugs to Federal soldiers. You know, I think in this show you needed a little more extra to fill in, because there was more gameplay happening in the game than actual, scenes. And, it made sense to add a little more in the show. And here comes the difference that Tess and Joel, they had guns that they were supposed to sell. It was their guns that they were selling or buying. I can't remember exactly, but in the show they were wanting to buy battery to go travel to meet up with Tommy, because in the so far the same thing happens where he's no longer with Tommy years later, and so he wanted a battery and a vehicle to go find Tommy or go meet up with Tommy, because they still kept the destination the same, where Tommy is at Wyoming. And so that happened. The next difference is that you don't see the Fireflies fighting Fedra in retaliation or something like that in the game. in the show, you see Robert fighting Fireflies. Or actually, no, yes. In the show, they are fighting the Fireflies because Tess was caught in the middle of it. And so while all that was going on, Tess uh, was also, and before that happened, she was on a chair tied up because Robert was, scared because I guess apparently Robert was scared of Joel, and he had every right to be scared because Joel was pretty savage. And so yeah, after the whole fiasco between the Fedra and Fireflies, uh she was able to escape out from Robert and his gang, but she also got captured from Fedra, being mistaken as a Firefly. But eventually, she was let go because she met up with Joel when he was sleeping, and that was another take on it. Because in the game, you don't know exactly the relationship, I in the game between Tess and Joel, and I think I guess you could have just have to assume that maybe they had a thing for each other. Yeah, but it didn't. The game didn't really give that vibe. It seemed like they had a good friendship for watching out from each other. In the show, you see Tess cuddling up with Joel, and so maybe it was safe to assume that they had a thing going on. And now, fast forward, after they wake up, Joel wants to meet up with Robert because they had a battery that they agreed upon to, or they were supposed to take. And instead of Marlene fighting the Fireflies, they were fighting Robert and his gang, where they were fighting for the car battery, which ends up being a dud because it wasn't even good at all to begin with. And so you meet up with Ellie, where exact we're in the exact same area, because in the game you meet Ellie just a little later when you meet up Marlene after Tess kills Robert. Where in the show, I believe Marlene kills Robert, or Robert, I believe, was already dead when they arrive in the scene of the fight. And that was in the show. And so, and you meet up with Ellie. Ellie's, pretty savage herself too. She's, immediately jumps out of the room with the knife, pointing at Joel. But, Joel like kicked her and, and then shoved the knife elsewhere. And the game, she didn't really put up much of a fight. I don't think she put up a fight just yet, just because Marlene was there. And so I think that was like the difference between the two. You don't see Marlene fighting Fedra, or she was fighting Robert, where in the game you see Tess and Joel and Experience fighting Robert and his gang. And so far, that's the difference. Another point of the difference is that when they sneak out, they meet up with the officer, the officer that Joel deal drugs with, and he ended up killing him. And you don't really see that part in the game at night while they're sneaking Ellie out. You see a few military officers testing them whether they were infected or not. You still find out that Ellie is infected, but nothing like what we saw in the show where Joel's awkwardly meets up the dude who he deal drugs with. Instead, in the game, Tess is trying to seduce them, and then the officer just has none of it. And so far, those are the differences. Aside from the dialogue, for obvious reasons, you need more dialogue, and it's kind of nice to see that the dialogue you see from the game, you see like transition between whatever they're talking about between the characters. And I think the show is pretty good. I think it's just kind of tough to enjoy it more just because we already played the game. For those of us who played the game, we know what's going on. We know what's going to happen next. We just, we're seeing it live action and we're seeing the difference. We've already been warned it's an adaptation, but it's you can't help the seeing the difference between the two, and you're just like, what the heck, that didn't happen in the game. But like, you just have to constantly remind yourself that it's an adaptation. Take it as like, this is an alternate universe where the stuff that happened in the game does not happen in this show. And I think they, at least I hope they're gonna take some iconic moments from the game and keep it in the show. At least for so far, they're keeping the infected, like the runners, the clickers, and the bloater. They're keeping all those the same design, the same way they look. And the trailer after the episode that ended, you see the bloater. Also, a nice thing that I didn't realize myself is that the voice actor that played Marlene is also playing in the show. The same voice actor is now acting as Marlene, which is really cool. So maybe we'll see other people who acted out from The Last of Us in the game and put in the show in live action. Who knows? I definitely want to Google who was in the game and see maybe they're in the show too as well, because I have not done that yet and I should soon. But I think that's my takeaway from the what we've seen so far, and hopefully the show doesn't disappoint and keep going for what we hope to see for those of us who play the game. For those of us who have not played the game and thinking of playing the game, definitely wait until after the show is over so you don't ruin it for yourself, because I think the show will be a good entertaining show to watch. I don't know where I was going there, but yeah, definitely. All right, thank you guys for watching, and I hope to see you guys in the next video I make. The next, I'll definitely keep reviewing every episode and keep comparing the difference between the two. And yeah, all right, see you guys.